Our other students are, yes, other students are waiting, and I wouldn't like, I mean, it's good that we go ahead as soon as possible. So, a very good afternoon to all the staff and Zeenath ma'am, who has taken this lovely time to educate all the students and parents and our teachers of grade 7 to 11
Mom, there's a beeping sound.
in today's meeting. To introduce Miss Zeenath Raza Khan, she's an assistant professor, business in IT ethics, management information systems, and international business. She heads the Integrity in Academia and Beyond Research Forum, and she's a fellow of Wollongong Academy of Tertiary Teaching Excellence in Sydney, in Australia. She's also been a winner of University of Wollongong as Vice Principal's Outstanding Contribution to Teaching and Learning in 2016 and Turnin Innovations Award Academic Integrity Middle East and Africa Regions 2015 and also bagged UOWD Excellence in Teaching Award in 2014. I think no one other than Zeenath ma'am would be the right person to help us as students, teachers, and parents. Actually, we all are students in her class today to learn more on remote learning, intellectual property, and integrity. Ma'am, Zeenath ma'am, we welcome you in today's session, and we big welcome to you all from the entire ASPAM fraternity, and we leave the floor to you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Swapnaja ma'am. I think it's amazing to be able to host this masterclass on behalf of University of Wollongong in Dubai, especially this topic because it's very close to my heart, and doing it for students of grades 7 to 11, a wonderful age group. Wide range, but at the same time, a lot of the things that I talk about today will apply to all of you for sure. Before we go ahead, I'm going to quickly do a small little exercise to show you guys why we need to be talking about what we are talking about today. At any time, Swapnoja ma'am, if there is a problem with listening or hearing, please do put it on the chat so that I can see it
Sure,
and I
I'll check.
keep an eye on it. All right, so what I'm
Absolutely.
about to show, just a quick note, of course, caution, please do not try what I'm showing because it is 100% illegal. I have taken permission from the people because I wanted to do this for the webinar today. So imagine I had a problem with somebody, right? And I wanted to get back at them. This happens in school. You get angry at people at times, right? So I go and look for the person's photo. I find it. I go into Photoshop. I cut out that person's picture out of that photo. Very quick, very easy. There are tons of softwares out there that actually help you do this right now, right? You don't even need Photoshop. I go to Dr. Google. I take this photo of this person holding hands, and it looks like it's from a cinema theater. I cut it out and I flip it because remember my photo was facing the other direction. And then I place that person's photo here. Now, it's not meant to look like a professional work because I am in no way a graphic designer, but this would have taken me about 5 minutes to do, right? So that's the power of all the devices and connectivity and the softwares that you have at your disposal today as students, right? So when you guys are in the digital space, it becomes very, very imperative to understand that what I've just shown you is in fact an utter violation of copyright and privacy laws. Not just that it is a violation, but that it's a violation of laws in any country that you go. You would normally I'm going to quickly mute everyone. If you could just keep your
Your
mics
voice is
muted,
not
that would
clear.
be really great. Thank you. So anywhere you go, this would be a violation of copyright and privacy laws, right? So that brings me to, of course, today's topic, which is remote learning, intellectual property, and integrity. And I'm going to try and link all of them together as we go through the session today. I hope to be able to cover a few of these, if not all of these topics in today's webinar. I am Dr. Zeenath, as Swapna Jamal has introduced very kindly. I've been working at the University of Wollongong in Dubai for the last almost 20 years. Teaching is my absolute passion, but I also like to research and understand student behavior, particularly when it comes to student cheating, using technology, understanding how technology helps us in classrooms, but at the same time hinders learning. So there's a lot of different areas that I usually focus on. So this topic is, as I said, right up my alley and something that I'm very, very passionate about. So quite excited to be delivering this masterclass on behalf of University of Wollongong in Dubai today. Everyone. Something I started doing about 2 months back when this whole lockdown happened is that I start all my remote classes by asking this simple question: how are you doing today? I think it's very, very important that we realize where our physical health is important, our mental health is just as important. So we need to be taking care of our well-being and asking each other this question. Social distancing is not easy, and it cannot be easy for students. Your life revolves around your friends, and we understand that as grown-ups. So I think it's very important to ask each other whenever you're in a common platform, how are you doing today? So as I go through, please do put in a comment on the chat as I ask you questions, so that I know that you guys are doing okay as the session progresses. So remote learning, you guys are all born into technology. You've seen technology all your lives. You have had technology at home. You've probably used technology in classrooms, but blended learning has been a part of education for a while now. But what COVID-19 has done, we call it the biggest disruptor in education. Disruptor is anything that changes something that has been going on completely. This is unprecedented. In 100 years, we have not had everybody in the globe face something like this, right? And what that has meant, of course, is schools closing down, going for remote classes, going into complete digital space and communicating with each other in the digital space, etc. But what's interesting to note here is I think we're very lucky because we're in UAE, and UAE has one of the first things they did as a country was ensure education continued, because that's a very big priority for a nation, any nation in the world, right? And that's what you also as students need to realize, that we're all doing this. All the teachers, all schools, management, everybody is ensuring your learning continues, because as students, that is your profession, to be a student, and you can only be a student if you're continuing to learn, right? So we are all here doing remote learning because we want to ensure your learning continues. But we understand that social distancing has not been easy. It is not easy for anybody. It has come with its own set of challenges, but it is also helpful to remember you are one of 1.5 billion students who've been affected by the school closures across 188 countries. That's about 91% of all those who have been affected. So that's a big number. And everybody in the globe, you're alone, yet you're facing the same thing that everybody else in the globe is facing. Unprecedented. Nothing like this have we ever faced or seen, or even, we don't even, a lot of us are just learning as we go, trying to figure out how do we make this work for you guys. Right. So getting back to the first example that I started off with, where does this then fit in with your whole remote learning experience that you've had for the past 2 months? We don't know yet when we're going to get back to normal. We don't even know what normal might look like come September, when the new academic year starts. So perspective, it is very important then for us to understand what is it that we are facing in terms of information and data that we have at the tip of our fingertips. So there is obviously a huge information overload out there. We know that. How do we know that? Think about the connectivity that's all around you. The world population is approximately about 7.4 billion people, and about 3.2 billion of us are already internet users. That means we are already connected. That's how connected everybody is. So everybody who can afford to be connected is on the internet and has at least one device, if not more, with which they are being connected, right? That's tremendous amount of connectivity. And to give you some perspective, think of the connectivity and what that means for information. Telephone as a technology took about 75 years to reach 100 million users. Naturally, it's 100 million users, right? You'd expect something to take 75 years. But you know what? Facebook took only 5 years to reach 100 million users. What's even more fascinating is Pokemon Go took less than a month to reach 100 million users. That's just how connected we all are in today's world. And with 2.7 zettabytes of data that exists in the digital universe, that's a lot of data at the tip of your fingertips, right? And you are able to copy and paste it anytime, share it at the click of a button, download it, print it, reprint it, reuse it, re-edit it. There's a lot that you can do with the data that is currently available. So it is very important then to ask this question: whose property is it? Right? So think back to the photos that I used right at the beginning. There were two photos I explicitly used. One was of my friend, which was from a website. And then the second one was of a movie theater, which was also from a website. So there are two very different sources of information and data that I have used. And I need to ask this question: whose property was it before I can use it? This is true even for instance, if you're using or downloading images from social media, if you're using Google Image, if you're downloading a movie or a music, or if you're using text for your assignments. So when you ask this question, let's do this quick scenario that I have adapted from one of my ethics courses and from Michael Quinn. So the scenario goes, I'm sure some of you might know Jack Sparrow and you might know Pirates of the Caribbean. So I've used those characters. So after rehearsals at a local theater, imagine Jack Sparrow decides to have dinner at a restaurant across the street from the theater. The restaurant is full of gossip about pirates, the East India Company, and all the intrigue that's happening on high seas. While after he has had his dessert, Jack Sparrow gets this amazing inspiration and quickly writes down a script for the movie Pirates of the Caribbean. What's even more interesting would be on the same night across the city in another restaurant, somebody called Liz Swan is hearing the same kind of gossip, is struck by the same inspiration, and writes the same play, Pirates of the Caribbean. So the focus then question becomes, who owns Pirates of the Caribbean? So all the students out there, please use the chat to quickly write down either Jack Sparrow or Liz Swan. I will give you 10 seconds. Go. Who owns the play? Jack Sparrow or Liz Swan?
Who know Pirates of the Caribbean? Bully, yes. Who
Both
owns
Jack Sparrow,
Pirates?
50-50, both are correct. Awesome answers, guys. Awesome answers. Okay, so it does give you a moment of pause. None of them. Oh, amazing. Somebody said that. Good. Person who talks about gossip. Okay. Cannot decide. Good. Okay. And I will tell you why you're not able to decide, guys. It's because of this word. Exactly the same play. Now, think about it. Would two people be ever able to string a group of words in the exact same manner? It's not possible. Have you guys ever heard of Chinese whisper? What that game tells you, if you don't know about it, is if I had 20 people in a room and I started whispering a story, and then that person whispered it to the next person, and then that person whispered it to the next person, and so on and so forth, by the time that story reached the 20th, the 100th person, the story would have changed because everybody understands it differently. Everybody says it differently, right? So when we say exactly the same play, do we really mean exactly the same play? So that's where the concept of property, tangible versus intangible, comes in. Tangible is anything that you can touch. Your mobile phones, your laptop, the keyboards that you're typing on currently. If somebody owns a car or a house, a book, a pen, all of this is tangible property, right? Things you can touch. Intangible property or intellectual property is typically anything that is a property, this thing, a product of your intellect, something that you have come up with. It could be a movie script, a book, a song, a drawing of some kind, a design, a medicine, or a treatment. All of this is intellectual property, things you can't really touch. But what does that mean in terms of our great friend Jack Sparrow? Well, in this case, when you think about property, two people cannot own the same property, right? It's easy to understand that when you've got physical property, because if I have a phone, you obviously can't own that same phone. Because you can't use it when I'm using it. I've bought it from the store. You may have the same make and model, which means you just got similar phone, but physical product, I have mine, which has a unique serial key, and you will have yours, which will have a unique serial key, right? But when it comes to intellectual property, then, is it the same? It's not, because no two people can ever string together words in the same order, in the exact same way. Think of reporters. They watch and they see and experience the same incidents, but when they go back and they report it, the way they say it, the way they write it, makes a huge difference, makes their career. So it depends on how well they're able to articulate the story, the kind of words they're able to use, the way they're able to organize the story and then present it to the audience. So no two people would actually ever be able to create an intellectual property which is the same. So intellectual property is then one of a kind. So here's a further twist that I would give. Oh, somebody said Johnny Depp. I love that. One evening, Jack Sparrow stays up all night in a restaurant writing Pirates of the Caribbean while Liz Swan goes to a party. Right? The next morning, Sparrow returns to the local theater, but he carelessly leaves a copy of the manuscript that he wrote at the restaurant. Swan stops by at that same restaurant for breakfast, sees the manuscript, goes, wow, that's amazing, copies it down, doesn't take the paper, copies it down, and leaves with the with her copy while leaving the original one at the table. Did Swan steal Pirates of the Caribbean? Go, 10 seconds, guys. Oh, a lot less confusion this time around. Fantastic. Okay, all right. Now, here's the thing though. Remember how I said we have physical property, which is tangible, and then we have intellectual property, which is intangible? There is a difference between the two, not just in the fact that you can touch something and you can't touch the other. If I took your phone, you wouldn't be able to use it anymore. That's stealing, right? I could go to the police. You could go to the police. You could tell them, this is my phone, this is the serial number. They might be able to track it, and they might be able to retrieve it for you, or they might be able to get you the equivalent amount of money back, right? Because when I have taken the physical property from you, you no longer have it, and therefore you cannot use it. When it comes to intellectual property, though, think about the poem or a song that you've heard. You keep singing it. Of course, hopefully we're not claiming that it's ours, right? But the fact that you're singing it doesn't take it away from the original artist. That's the difference between intellectual property and physical property. So when we say stealing in that sense, it isn't necessarily the same. So what will happen is it will be copied. So copying an intellectual property is actually very, very different from stealing a physical object. And therein lies our greatest risk, intellectual property. Think about the people who are actually coming up with or trying to come up with, some kind of a vaccination for the COVID-19. If they were too scared, no, if I take it out, somebody's going to copy it and somebody's going to steal it from me. So I will just keep it in my house. It's going to be of no good. It will have no value because nobody's going to actually be able to benefit from the vaccination. It won't really be a vaccination, right? So for a person to actually see a value of their creation, they have to risk copycats, and they have to risk not keeping it a secret. And that's what actually makes intellectual property so much more complicated than physical property. And that's where the definition comes in, that intellectual property is any unique product of the human intellect that has commercial value. So that's where you're actually risking the, the copycat. Anybody who can see it could easily copy it. So then comes the question, how do we protect this intellectual property? And there is actually a wide range of copyright law, the intellectual property rights that are out there that are there to protect people's ideas, people's thoughts and songs and movies, right? I'm not going to go through all of them because the focus for today's masterclass is copyright. So what do I mean by copyright? Copyright is a law that protects anything that is literary, for instance, books, text, articles, publishing, films, film scripts, music, choreography of a dance, sculpture, drawings, photographs, paintings. All of these can be protected by copyright law, right? What does that mean? So if I have come up with a literary work, like a book or an article, copyright means I have the right to reproduce it as much as I want. I can distribute it wherever I want. I can put it up on public display. I can do a performance, or I can produce it, use it to derive more work from it. That's what copyright actually means, and that's the kind of right copyright.
There is also something called fair use.
Mute everyone. Thank you. Copyright protections has been there for a while now, and they've been changing and expanding greatly. And typically, when you have a copyright, it covers the duration of the person who created it, their lifetime. So how much ever they lived. Somebody could be 20, had a great hit, and then passed away. Somebody could be 70, 80, 90, and have tremendous amount of contributions. So it's the lifetime of the person plus about 50 to 70 years, depending on which country you're in. So the copyright law typically would be around this. So what does it mean for students? So we've been talking about intellectual property. You've hopefully understood now the difference between physical property and intellectual property, and why it's important to understand copyright, right? Because it's something that owned by somebody, because it's been created by someone, and they have put it out in the platform for the benefit of whatever the product is. So if it's a medicine, it's meant to cure people. If it is a textbook, it's meant to be used for education. So there is a purpose for it. What it means for students, let's go through some of these scenarios. Checking email with attachments and forward. Looking up something online, including photos, videos, music. Scanning a page from a book in the library, taking it home, using it for your research, and then actually quoting from that textbook. Looking up a quote on Google, taking the page number, publisher details, so that you can put it in your literary work. Sitting in class and browsing something because your teacher has asked you to do some research. Reposting, I love Trevor Noah, behind the scenes on social media that somebody else may have shared on your wall or your story. Catching a pre-recorded episode on your digital video recorder. Taking a selfie, we all do this when we go to the movies, especially if you've loved a movie, you come out immediately, stand in front of the poster and start taking photos and then posting it on social media. Sending articles you find online to your group mates for a project. Editing a video, adding music to it, adding text to it, and then putting it up on YouTube and sending it to your teacher as a link because it was a part of a project, or using the airport to do one of these editing work, writing a review of a movie and uploading it to a blog. I'm sure you would have done at least some, if not all of this in your lifetime as a student, right? And a lot of students might actually do all of this in a 24-hour time span. From the time they've woken up till the time they've gone to sleep, they would have done a lot of these things together. Now, what's interesting to realize is all of these that I've just told you, these examples, are copyright material that you're using, right? So why haven't we been fined? Why haven't we been pulled up by the police? And why haven't we paid for it? Because if it is copyright, things like printing an information sheet for a class, I'm sure your teachers give out information sheets all the time to you guys. Making copy of a Google map for a geography class, or reproducing a news article to stimulate some kind of class discussion in the classroom, printing a free math sheet from a website for class practice. Why aren't we paying for these? We actually aren't paying for this because there's something also called a fair use for copyright. What that does, it's got some factors such as why are you using it? What is the nature of the work that you're using? How much of the work are you actually using? And is it going to have a direct impact on the market? So for instance, if I loved a book which was printed 50 years ago, and a lot of the information is still valid, but the publisher doesn't print it anymore, the author is not there anymore, but I want to still use it in my classroom. I go and make a photocopy of that book and I give it out to my students. That would be fair use because it is out of publish, it is not being printed anymore, there is no impact on the market, and it is for the purpose of education. But at the same time, if I took a book that is currently in print and I printed the whole book, it's already against copyright. It's no longer fair use. So fair use really, really helps students and of course the education industry as a whole for us to ensure we are able to continue with your process of learning. So where do we draw the line? So here I am telling you there is copyrights. We want to ensure we are not copying other people's work. And at the same time, I'm saying there's something called fair use that says I can use other people's work. There is, of course, a line. And the line is called attribution. Attribution is basically when you're giving acknowledgement of a work to a person, right? That person could be an author or an artist, somebody who is actually the creator of that work. The word is attribution. How do you do it? I'm going to give you a quick example of how you could actually do this for this image that you see in front of you, which is a copyright. As you can see, the image is there, and at the bottom, I've given you a source. The next screen, if you can follow the mouse. So I've gone to Google, I type copyright infringement. I say labeled for non-commercial use. I scroll up and down looking for that particular image. I have found it. I go and click the link. It comes up. As you can see, it's under something called Creative Commons. And then right at the bottom, attribution and original image. So if you have to use this image, the website says, please do so happily, as long as you actually give us the correct attribution. In this case, the source. So what does it mean for you guys? What it means is there is something called copyright infringement and there's something called plagiarism, which if you do either of these, you have actually violated the copyright law and the fair use doesn't apply anymore. So what is copyright infringement? It is when you are using somebody else's work without their permission. You're violating the owner's right. Remember, I talked about 5 rights, where they've got the permission to reproduce, distribute, and so on. And it has one victim, the person who is the copyright holder. Versus when you look at plagiarism, it's when you are claiming someone else's work is your own. You're not providing due credit, so you're not providing the attribution. And it has 2 victims, the copyright holder and the people who were lied to. Usually in plagiarism for students, it means your teachers. If you look at it as a Venn diagram, what I did was put on what is moral and what is legal. And while copyright infringement is 100% illegal, plagiarism has a small bracket where, depending on where the plagiarism has happened, in what manner, it could be considered as illegal. But most of the time, it would be something definitely immoral. So that brings me to the whole concept of academic integrity. Plagiarism is just one kind of academic misconduct that's out there. And now that you guys are in the remote platform, you're constantly, okay, somebody's saying the texting is annoying. Hey guys, guess what? I'm talking and there's chatting and I'm still managing to keep a concentration. So this might be a good way of practicing your concentration focus on the lesson rather than on the chat that's happening. Okay? So plagiarism is one type of academic misconduct that's out there. There are many. I've just mentioned a few here, which is cheating, for instance, in the classroom, collusion, that is working with somebody or taking help from someone when you're not supposed to do that, and it's supposed to be your own work. Fraud, misinterpretation and fabrication of data and information, just making up interviews. Oh, I interviewed 50 people, and this is what they said, when actually you didn't interview anybody. Obstruction, as simple as going to the library and removing a book you know everybody else in the class is going to want to use. Okay, and of course plagiarism, as I have mentioned. So what is academic integrity? So we want to protect student values, and that is ensuring you are fair to yourself and everybody else, that you're always honest, you're truthful, you're responsible with the knowledge that we are giving you. So the way you're learning it and the way you're using it, you're respectful of yourself and everybody around you at all times, under any circumstances, irrespective of how difficult things get. Have you ever heard of that saying that doing right is, ethics is right when, even if nobody else is doing it, and wrong is wrong even if everybody else is doing it? So academic integrity is a lot like that. So even if everybody else around you might be cheating, if you don't do it, that's your integrity and that's your value, right? Why is this important? Because it actually benefits all students, not just you now in your classroom or your school, but in the bigger picture of things, when you graduate and go into university, and then you graduate from a university and you want to get a job. When there's a scandal, nobody wants to hire people from that university, because automatically people think, hey, if one cheated, what's the likelihood others haven't cheated? Same thing goes for schools, right? So graduate values, these attributes that we're talking about of integrity and trust and honesty, they're transferable skills that we hope that you have learned in your entirety of time that you have been in your schools, right? What does that mean? Stable employment, better jobs, higher salaries, and of course, longer life. And this is what research has actually proved. In its absence, like I mentioned, it raises doubts on the quality of education that you're getting, which will lead to your school losing standing in the bigger scheme, because universities will not want to take students from a school where there has been a scandal of students cheating. Ultimately, who is going to be the loser? The students are the losers. You're losing scholarship opportunities, internships, job offers. Companies do not want to hire students from universities that have had a string of scandals about student cheating, because research has also shown students, if they cheat in classrooms, there's a good chance they're going to be very, very dishonest, even in workplaces. So what is the impact of plagiarism? Here's just a few that I have put together for you guys. For instance, Monash University Vice Chancellor had to resign because he plagiarized when he was a student. Harvard University had a huge scandal in 2012 where more than 100 students cheated in a take-home test. Australian universities were embroiled in a student scandal over contract cheating, where one company was writing essays and assignments for students, to the point the scandal reached where universities took back, revoked the certificates and degrees of students who had already graduated. So that's the impact of plagiarism. Stanford University has had scandals. We know Bihar schools have had scandals where parents have paid people, and they themselves have climbed the walls to give chits to their students, so their children, so that they could pass and get higher grades. Universities in Nigeria, US, India, Bangladesh have sacked professors over plagiarism cases that sometimes have happened actually back when they were students, not even when they were in their official position. And of course, this latest one, which was a huge scandal in USA, not sure how many of you know of this, where it was a huge US admission scandal. Quite a few celebrities were involved. There was this whole varsity blues, it was called Operation, where they were taking money from these parents, and parents were happily paying the money to have people change the grades, sit for their students in these SAT and IELTS exams, and of course in the admission tests and things like that. Consequences of that, these students got expelled from the schools. They've been, really hounded on social media. whispered about by classmates and mocked online. And the parents themselves who did it have actually gotten prison time because it is considered illegal to what they have done. So there are some serious consequences of plagiarism out there that as students you need to realize. It's not just about, oh, I just cheated, it's okay. It really isn't. I don't know how many of you know Jay Shetty. He was this guy who really started inspiring and getting a huge following of students. 2018, 17, 18, he was apparently this monk who changed his ways and became this inspirational, motivational speaker. He'd make these videos at rapping and saying poetry and giving advice to people. But you know what happened in 2019, last year? This person, the internet, she actually exposed him. And this is the level of his plagiarism that she exposed. Look at the two texts that are there. So the first one is actually by Tony Robbins, who is a very famous life coach. He said, do what you did in the beginning of a relationship and there won't be an end. And Jay Shetty claimed that statement, and this is what he said. Do what you did at the start of your relationship and there won't be a finish. So they've literally just changed two words, and he claimed that to be his. And look at it. It has come out. Ultimately, people have called him out on it. Impact across the world, if you just go to Dr. Google and type student cheating, you'll get hordes of news articles and headlines like this from Stanford to UK universities to Harvard. They've all had their share of cheating and plagiarism problems. So it's not something that just happens in one school or one classroom or one country. It's a global problem. And the reason it's a problem is because students sometimes don't realize the severity and the impact of plagiarism. And it actually has very, very serious consequences, from firing and losing your position, losing your name and your integrity, to actually people then committing suicide, which even happened right here in Dubai in 2014. So these have very, very serious consequences for students. And as students, you need to realize that these are things you should not be doing, right? So how do we avoid it? Because it's a master class, I'm going to try and give you guys some, superpower tips, which I hope will help you guys in your classes. And of course, in your, once you graduate and go into university, it might help you there as well. Right? So what is academic writing? Academic writing is nothing but a formal piece of work that you have written for your assignment, for your coursework. Could be for an essay, could be a report that you have written, could be in your school as a class, could be in university when you go into university. It is not just something that you just type out. It's not a blog piece or something that you put out on the internet or social media. It's usually written in a formal language. And the most important thing is that it's accurate. So when you write anything, you need to back it up. How do you back it up? You back it up with evidence. What is evidence? You quote people who are experts. Now, if you talk about academic writing, I've been researching this area in particular since about 2005. So you could say I may be an expert. So you could quote me and my research work saying, Zeenath has said this about student cheating, right? But if somebody just comes up today and says, hey, I think these, students are this and that and etc., and they don't really have credentials to back up that they are experts, you can't be quoting them, because then that evidence does not have value for the argument that you've put forward. So academic writing is standing on you being able to put together a string of words which are yours, and at the same time supporting that with evidence which is not your word but somebody else's, with due credit, right? Some stages to go through when you want to acquire these good writing skills. The first thing is, of course, planning. Planning is extremely, extremely important. You don't just sit and start writing because you've been given something to write. You need to think about it. You need to think, what do I know about the topic? What do I need to look for? Then you have a clear idea of how much evidence you need, or how much references you need to use in your piece of work to make it a nice, strong article. Whether, again, like it's an essay or a report, an analytical piece, a literature review, could be any of those things. Okay. Then the next thing you do is think about your introduction and your conclusion. And here's the trick. You actually write like a sketch out what you think your conclusion of the article will be. Now, I know it sounds so weird, right? Because I'm telling you that you should think about the conclusion before you've even written your article. But here's the thing, guys. The conclusion is your end. That's what you want to achieve, right? So you sketch out what your conclusion is going to be, and then you start working towards it. You know how it's going to start building. Your conclusion might change eventually because you'll realize what you originally thought is not true. You need to change it. Fine, that's okay. But what that conclusion does, it gives you a target to work towards. And you actually write your introduction at the end. Again, you can sketch it at the beginning, but that cannot be your final one, because an introduction is the first glimpse somebody has to your entire piece of work, right? And it's not just about the topic, it's about the whole paper you have written. So you can only do that and be comprehensive once you've actually written the whole paper and you know the structure and you know what you've put in. So your actual final introduction is going to come in right at the end. And then, of course, you develop in between coherent paragraphs that make sense and that have an order, right? You can't talk about football in one paragraph and suddenly jump and talk about Mars and Venus in the other. There needs to be a consistency and a logic to how you are developing your paragraphs. So when I talk about planning, make Venn diagrams like this. This is called a mind map. So you are putting in the central point of focus of the theme that the question has asked you, and then you start writing what you know and what you don't know all around it. So planning is very, very important. Things to remember about this whole process. Remember, this is a formal piece of work. So that means you need to use standard language, third person. You inform, but you do not entertain, please. Okay, no digressions and no repetitions as well. All right. Stages. The next thing that you do is read, research, label. Very, very important. If you remember what when I talked about your planning, is you write down what you know, and then you know how much you don't know about that topic. So all that amount that you don't know about the topic, you're actually going to research. Now, a lot of students I know start researching and start typing immediately. Problem with that is your brain's a sponge. It starts taking everything in. And after a while, you've read so much, you can't distinguish between what is yours and what is something you've read somewhere else, right? And then it becomes a problem because you eventually start typing out words that you've read before, and that belongs to somebody else, and you may not have given the right attribution for it. So when you're reading and you're researching, start labeling them. You already know, you've done a planning, so you know what all you want to work on, right? And then you start labeling the information that you are collecting so that you know, I'm going to use this information for this paragraph and so on and so forth. That leads you to develop a good referencing and citation for your article, which is going to ensure you have not plagiarized or infringed on anybody's copyright. There are two stages to actually doing this. The first stage is acknowledging the source within your text itself. How does it look like? This is how you cite a source within the text. That's the sentence. So I have taken that sentence from somewhere. I will put a paragraph, parenthesis. Inside, I will put the author's name and the date. That is how you will do in-text citation. As you write your article, you start putting in the date, the citation within your article. There are three ways to do this. Either direct, you've heard it, you've read it, you copy and paste it. Great. Make sure you put quotations, and at the end, you put the in-text citation. Paraphrasing, example, you have read something and you have understood it and you have written it in your own words. It's still not your idea. So you still need to then do in-text citation. And inferences, you read from two different places and you've come to a conclusion. Again, to back up that conclusion, you still need to cite the 2 places that you have gotten the ideas from. So 3 ways of ensuring you have good citation. Once you got this citation, you need to then build what is called a reference list. It's not enough to say Khan 26. What is Khan 26? There could be thousands of Khan 26s out there. So in your reference list, then you actually quote the exact place from where you have taken that information. And what I have shown you is called the Harvard referencing style. There are many styles out there. It really depends on your institution. It's somebody saying they can't hear. Is everyone okay with the audio? Okay. All right. So, so depends on your institution and what system they follow. Harvard author-gate or the Harvard referencing style is very popular in Australia. There is also something called APA. There is MLA. There are a lot of different styles out there. You need to know what your institution follows, and then you need to actually make sure you are, you're good at that one and you're able to use that system. Okay. If you look at the reference list, that's where if somebody read my article and it said Khan 26 and they wanted to check that source, they would go to my reference list. They would look for Khan 2016, and then that is the name of the title. This is the link where it is, and I have taken that information from slide 26, which is the information. So the person can actually verify your exact source. At the same time, they can also look it up maybe for additional information. So that is these are the 2 stages that you need to remember when you're thinking of academic writing. Avoid being in a situation where you ask these questions, guys. And these are some very common things that students end up asking, such as, can't I avoid problems just by listing sources? No, you can't. Remember, even if you've listed, we need to know where you use them within your text, the actual essay or the report that you have written. Okay. 2, if I put my ideas into my own words, hey, if it's your own ideas in your own words, then you don't have to cite anybody else because it's yours. But I didn't know anything about the subject, so how much do I cite? That's a very good question. This is why, if you remember right at the beginning, I told you guys that make sure when you're planning, you write out what you know and what you don't know. Then you know exactly how much you need to be citing. How can I tell what's my idea? You can't tell after a while what's your idea if you haven't kept a track and if you have not done the labeling properly. What if I did not know the policy? That's like the worst thing to ever tell somebody. Imagine you got stopped on the road because you were speeding, or you parked in the wrong place. You can't tell the policeman, I didn't know that was the speed limit. You'll still get fined, right? So not knowing the policy is not a good enough question to ask. Once you've done all of these things, please make sure you revise, then you double check your marking criteria. How is the teacher going to mark you? Have you included all of that? Check your submission requirements, and of course, finally, submit. Some final takeaways from this masterclass. Please remember, intellectual property rights are there to protect innovation for everyone. Imagine the assignments that you do for your class. All right, you spend a lot of effort doing that work. Imagine somebody stole that work, just put their name on it and submitted, and actually managed to get, like 100% or 90%. How would that make you feel? That's the exact same thing when you copy somebody's work without giving them credit. It's the exact same feeling. Right? It is important to understand that there is a difference between copyright infringement and plagiarism. Students don't necessarily cheat more when they're online, something that I keep reminding students in general, because a lot of people have gotten worried about having assessments online, thinking, oh, that's it, students are going to cheat. Students don't cheat more or less when they're online. Those who are cheating are cheating. Those who don't cheat don't cheat. They're more worried about their learning process and, of course, studying, right? Rules on remote space is the same as your physical space. So all the rules and all the policies that apply to you when you're in your school campus actually apply to you even when you're in the remote space. Okay, remember why you should learn. This whole like I said, you guys are students. Your profession is learning. So that is what should be your focus and nothing else. Learning. Not the marks. Marks will come. If you have studied and if you've understood the concept, the assessment, the purpose of any kind of assessment is just to check whether you understood, right? If you
Ma'am.
understood, you'll do fine in your assessments. Revisit your school policy on plagiarism and copyright so that you know, revisit the policy on what the citation systems are. And remember, we trust you as educators, faculty, management. We actually trust students. We don't think we are police and you're thieves. We're not running after you and trying to catch cheaters because we trust you and we respect you. The question is, do you respect yourselves enough not to cheat, not to plagiarize? At the end, particularly in a virtual space,
Zeenath, ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to check whether everybody is able to hear, because in the chat there are a few people who are not able to hear. Students, can we just immediately hear from you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fine.
some are
No,
able to
like,
hear.
Yeah. Sorry, Zeenath, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay. So in the end, especially when you're in the virtual space, guys, remember you're your own invigilators. What really matters to you should be what we teach you and not your grades. Grades will come. You work hard, grades will come. But don't work hard at cheating or plagiarizing because that will not get you far at all, as you have seen in the umpteen number of evidences that I've given you today. So with that, I come to the end of today's masterclass session. These are a few of the resources that I use, and I'm open to any questions from any of the students or parents or teachers who are out there.
Ma'am,
Yes.
I had one question. Can I ask?
Yes, please. Could you introduce yourself and then ask the question?
Ma'am, my Preet, and my question to you is that some or remaking some song be a case of plagiarism?
Remaking, like remixing,
Remake and tell
remixing songs.
remake plagiarism.
Okay. So it wouldn't be plagiarism. Remember what I said about copyright? Fair use allows you to actually use other people's work with correct attribution, but it means acknowledging that this original work was not yours. And that's why you will see a lot of the times when people do covers, they will actually say cover for the original artist's name, right? So that's fair use. So you've taken something and then you have added something else to it, but you're giving acknowledgement to the original person as well. So when you actually do something like that, like remixing or doing a cover of a song, and you've given the name of the original artist, you're actually giving that attribution. So it's not plagiarism. Plagiarism would be the wrong word to use here. What you want to look at is copyright infringement. Copyright infringement would be when you try to download the music for free from somewhere and then you start sharing it. And what you've actually done is piracy, right? Because that music might actually be copyrighted. And in the
Yes,
moment
ma'am.
you are downloading it from an illegal website instead of from a legal one, you are actually pirating that music and then it's copyright infringement. Hope that helps.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else with a question?
My name is Daniel Matthias. I have a question, ma'am. What does the copyright infringement not work on? Like you said, it works on songs or essays where we have to take research or whatever. What does it not work on, like specifically?
What
Can
do
you
you mean?
repeat that? As in, like
Not
sometimes there's something you just can't copy, right? You just can't copy.
um, most of the time, if something has been copyrighted, they will also tell you how you can use that, right? They will actually give you that instruction. A lot of the times, if it's published work, like say textbooks or an article, they will tell you you can use it for non-commercial purposes, which means for education purposes. So as a student, if you're reading from a book, you're reading an article, you are allowed to use it and quote it as long as you are putting in the correct citations and you are attributing it to the correct source, right? But if you are reproducing something for a specific purpose, which might actually have commercial value attached to it, then you might need to go back to the original printers, publishers, authors, and get written permission. Sometimes they give you the permission, sometimes they might not give you permission. They might actually charge you. And the charging then becomes what is known as licensing, right? And that's where you hear about, how people have gotten licensed to show. How do you think movie theaters are showing movies? How do you think TV channels are showing you movies and playing songs? They have actually bought the license to play those movies and those songs from the distributor, right? So that's how they are ensuring they are sticking to the copyright policy and protecting the rights of the owners. Hope that answers your question. Do you have any more questions? All right. If we don't have any more
Students,
questions,
grade 11 girls had two questions yesterday. This was regarding Zeenath ma'am, in one of the last classes that we had along with you in our school premises. You had spoken something about showing the victory sign during photography.
yes.
Yeah, and we just told our students in the cyber safety class to not to do the V or the show the victory sign, because that may put up the fingerprints on the I mean anybody can trace it. So they had a question. Yeah, so could you please spread some more information on this, because the girls of grade 11 said that they keep on saying bye bye to everybody when they are moving out of the Zoom link. So would that be
Yes.
okay or no? Could you please guide on that?
Well, typically, you don't want to have your palm facing the webcam, because there are actually software now out there which can take your palm's photo and then derive the fingerprint from it. So technology has become quite advanced, and so for your safety and for the safety of your data, to protect your information, you need to be actually extremely careful. Same thing goes for when you're actually attending remote classes. Don't take screenshots. Don't switch on the webcam without asking your parents or whoever is around you, because remember, they all have privacy and we should not be infringing on that either. Don't take screenshots without permission of everybody who is actually there, because what that means is you're actually taking somebody else's photo. Remember that first example that I showed you. So there are a lot of rules that we need to follow, and they're pretty much the same when you're actually in a physical space. So you need to be careful about these things because they actually do trickle down to how you keep yourself and your information safe on the cyberspace.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, I think if we don't have any more questions, that brings this masterclass to an end. Again, from the University of Wollongong in Dubai, we thank you so much for attending this session. I'm extremely happy that we were able to offer this masterclass absolutely for free for students, because as a university, we take our social responsibility to the community very seriously. And we think all of this is what will actually help you students with a smooth transition to when you finally go into your university life, because academic integrity and academic writing is the basis and the foundation of education anywhere in the world. And that's what holds up your integrity as a student, as a learner, and of course for your entire school and the university that you'll ultimately join. So thank you again, everybody, for being here and joining us. And thank you to Swapna Jaman for coordinating and moderating the session so well. Thank you. I'll stop the recording now.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Zeenath ma'am, it is our pleasure and honor to have you here out of your busy schedule to hold